They brought the werewolf out in chains at first light, and I came down to the moonyard to watch him die. I had not slept. A king learns to wear a still face over a sleepless night, and I wore mine as I crossed the frost-silvered stones, my captains falling in behind me, their breath smoking in the cold. The whole of Vascarn seemed to hold that breath with them. Above the yard the sky was the gray of old iron, and the torches along the wall guttered low, and in the center of it all, ringed by 6 chains and 12 spears, stood the beast that had been my brother's before the world broke. Skal, a moon wolf of the old blood, taller at the shoulder than a tall man, his coat the silver of a blade left out in snow, his eyes the pale gold that runs in the war wolves of the north. 3 years past he had carried Eirik into every fight and out of it again, and the two of them together had been a thing that made grown warriors go quiet with awe. Then Eirik fell at the hollow ford with a rival pack spear through him, and Skal had come home alone, dragging the reins, and something in the great beast had gone with my brother into the dark. He had not let a soul near him since. Not me. Not the beast keepers who had raised him from a pup. He tore the pen gates from their hinges. He would take meat from no hand. And when, in the folly of hope, I had ordered warrior after warrior to try and gentle him back to the saddle, he had thrown every one of them broken Herc's arm, laid Osric's scalp open to the bone, sent young Doran to the healers with 3 ribs stove in. A werewolf that will carry no rider and suffer no hand is not a werewolf any longer. It is a grief with teeth, chained in the middle of your hold, and every dawn it does not die is a dawn your warriors watch you and wonder if their king has gone soft with sorrow. So I had given the order. This morning, before the hold woke fully, we would end him cleanly, and I would bury the last of my brother, and Vascarn would be whole again in the way that hard men call whole. "He'll not go easy," said Havard beside me. My war captain was a slab of a man, gray-bearded, scarred from a lifetime of the fighting pits and the border wars, and he had loved Eirik too, in the gruff way of old soldiers. He did not want this either, but Havard believed in the shape of things that a beast which will not serve must be put down, that a warrior who cannot win must step aside, that the world is a ledger and every soul in it owes its worth or is struck from the page. He had said as much to me 100 times. He said it now with his eyes on the wolf. "Then we do it fast," I said. "Archers, no spears in the yard where he can reach a man." Skal lifted his great head. His pale eyes found me across the frost, and I swear to you the beast knew. He knew what dawn this was. He did not snarl. He did not lunge against the chains as he had every morning for a moon. He only looked at me steady, the way Eirik used to look at me across the war table when he thought I was making a fool's choice and was too loyal to say so aloud. Something in my chest turned over. I made my face stiller. "Loose the archers," I said. And that was when a voice came from the ranks along the wall, low, unhurried, a woman's voice, pitched not to plead but to be heard. "Give me the beast, my king, not the blade, give me the beast." The whole yard turned. She stepped out from among the shield warriors of the 3rd War Band, and I did not know her, which tells you something, for I know my fighters. She was neither tall nor broad. She wore the plain boiled leather of a low-ranked pit warrior, no rank braid, no wolf token at her throat, and across the left side of her face ran a scar, an old burn, healed years since, that pulled the corner of her eye and drew a pale seam down into the collar of her jerkin. Her hair was dark and cut short as a soldier cuts it. She stood the way the truly dangerous stand, which is to say she stood the way a person stands who has stopped expecting to be rescued and has made her peace with that. Havard laughed. It was not a cruel laugh exactly. It was the laugh of a man who has seen everything and expects nothing. "Sit down, girl," he said. "That beast has thrown men twice your weight and broken half of them doing it. Sit down before you shame yourself." She did not sit down, she did not even look at him. She looked at me. "They put me in the pits when I was 14 because there was nowhere else to put me," she said, and her voice never rose. "I have fought in this hold for 11 years. I have never once been chosen, not for a warband raid, not for an honor guard, not for a saddle. I am the warrior your captains send when they do not care whether the warrior comes back. You are about to kill a creature that everyone has decided cannot be saved. A pause. I know something about that. Give me until the sun clears the wall. If I fail, you have lost nothing but a little time, and I have lost nothing I was ever going to be given anyway. There are moments a king feels the ground of a thing shift under him and cannot say why. I felt it then. I told myself it was only that I did not want to kill my brother's wolf, and here was a reason to wait an hour longer. I told myself that. It was not the truth, but I did not have the truth yet. The truth was standing in the middle of my moon-yard in a low warrior's boiled leather, and I had not yet the eyes to see her. "What is your name?" I asked. "Sable," she said. Havard turned to me, incredulous. "My king." "Until the sun clears the wall," I said. "Stand your archers down. Sable of the third band has asked for the beast. Let her have him." They cleared the yard to the walls. I would not have my warriors within reach of Skal if he turned, and I would not have them close enough to shame her if she failed. 12 spears drew back to the perimeter. The archers kept their strings slack but knocked. Havard stationed himself at my shoulder with his jaw set like a man watching a friend walk out onto thin ice, and I stood at the yard's edge with my arms folded and my heart, though I did not name it so, already beginning to lean forward. Sable walked out to the beast alone. She left her shield at the gate. She left her sword. She unbuckled the long knife from her hip and set it on the stones behind her, and she walked towards 6 chains and a grieving war-wolf with nothing in her hands at all. Skal saw her come and rose from his crouch, and the sound that came out of him then was the sound that had emptied the pens and broken Herc's arm, a low, rolling snarl that you felt in the wall of your chest more than heard, the promise of a creature that has decided the world is its enemy and has the size and the teeth to argue the point. 2 of the archers half raised their bows. I lifted one hand to hold them. Sable stopped. She did not stop the way prey stops, frozen. She stopped the way you stop at the edge of deep water, deliberately, choosing the edge. And then very slowly she lowered herself down, not into a fighter's crouch. She knelt, on the frost in front of a snarling war-wolf that had crippled 4 of my best. She went down onto her knees and she turned her scarred cheek toward him and she looked at the ground. I heard Havard's breath hiss between his teeth. "She's mad," he murmured. "She's given him her throat." She had not given him her throat. I understood that only later, turning the morning over and over in the years that came after, she had given him her harmlessness. Every man who had gone to Skal had gone to master him. Hands out to seize, voice pitched to command, the whole body a declaration of "I will make you mine." And Skal, who had been made a thing to be mastered his whole life, and had lost the one master who had ever also loved him, had met each of them the only way a broken warwolf knows how. But no one had ever come to him and simply knelt. No one had ever come with empty hands and a bowed head and asked nothing of him at all. The snarl did not stop, but it changed, it thinned, it grew uncertain. And then Sable began, very softly, to sing. I did not know the words at first. They were old, older than my crown, a lullaby in the deep tongue of the north that the beast keepers hum to the pups in the whelping season, a small circling melody with no grandeur in it, the kind of song a mother might use to settle a frightened thing in the dark. Her voice was not beautiful. It was low and a little rough, and it did not try to be anything but steady. She sang it once through, kneeling on the frost, and then again, and on the second pass I felt the hair rise on my arms because I knew that song. Eirik had hummed it. Not often, my brother was a hard man and would have been embarrassed to be caught at it, but on the long cold watches of the border, when he thought no one heard, he had hummed that circling little tune to Skal. And the great wolf had leaned against his knee and gone soft-eyed as a pup. Sable could not have known that. There was no way in the world she could have known that. Skal stopped snarling. The silence that came down over the moon-yard then was a silence I have never forgotten. 100 warriors on the walls, and not one of them so much as shifted his weight. The torches guttered. The frost smoked. and in the center of it the great silver werewolf who had let no living soul near him for 3 years took one slow step, and then another, toward the kneeling woman and lowered his enormous head, and scented, very gently, the burned and scarred side of her face. She did not flinch from him. That was the thing that undid me watching. She had every reason in the world to flinch. This was a mouth that could have taken her arm off at the shoulder, and she did not. She stayed still under his breath, still singing, and lifted one hand, palm up, not toward his head where a hand seizes, but low, open, toward his chest where nothing is asked. And Skal leaned into it. He leaned his whole grieving weight into the open hand of a warrior no one had ever chosen. And I heard, carrying across the still yard, a sound I had not heard him make since Eirik died. He whined, low and long and broken, the sound of a creature setting a thing down that it has carried too far alone. Something struck me then. I have tried many times to find the honest words for it, and I am not sure there are any, but I will tell you what it was like. It was not in my head. It was behind my ribs, in the old blood place where the bond between a Vaskarn king and the war-wolves of his line has run for 100 generations. That channel of knowing that lets a rider feel his wolf's fear and a wolf feel his rider's rage. Through that old channel, through Skal's recognition of the woman in the frost, something ran up into me like a hearth catching light in a cold and shuttered room. A warmth I had no name for. A certainty, arriving whole and without my leave, that said, her. As though the beast had reached across the bond and shown me a thing my eyes had been too proud and too grieved to see. I had ruled Vaskarn 9 years without a Luna. My council had paraded me daughters of allied packs, and I had felt nothing, and I had let them think me cold. I was not cold. I had simply never once felt the thing the old songs promised, the bond, the recognition, the sudden knowing that the world had made one person to stand at your side. I had begun to believe it a story we tell to make the loneliness of power bearable. I stopped believing that in the moonyard at dawn, watching my brother's wolf lay his great head in the lap of a scarred woman I had met a quarter of an hour before. My king, Havard's voice was strange. He had gone pale under his gray beard. My king, do you see? I see, I said. My own voice did not sound like mine. Stand the archers down, all of them, now. The sun cleared the wall. Sable rose slowly, so as not to startle him, and Skal rose with her, and where 3 years of my best warriors had failed, this one woman walked the length of the moonyard with a war-wolf packing at her shoulder like a hound at heel. She stopped before me. The wolf stopped too, and turned those pale gold eyes on me, Eirik's wolf, looking at me over the head of a stranger who was not, I already knew somewhere beneath knowing, a stranger at all, and he did not snarl. He regarded me the way he used to when my brother stood between us, calm, waiting as if to say, "Well, have you understood yet, or must I show you plainer?" "The sun's cleared the wall, my king," Sable said. There was frost melting in her dark hair. Up close the scar was worse than it had looked from across the yard, and somehow it did not diminish her at all. It was simply part of the fact of her, like the set of her jaw. The beast lives. I ask nothing for it. Only don't kill him. You ask nothing, I repeated. I have learned not to, she said, and there was no bitterness in it, which was somehow worse than bitterness. It was simply a thing she had learned, the way you learn the weight of a shield. And I, who had come down that morning to bury the last of my brother, stood in the melting frost and found that my careful still face had gone somewhere and I could not call it back. 11 years, I said. You have fought in my hold 11 years, and no captain ever chose you. No, my king. Why? She considered the question as though it were fair, which it was not. There is nothing fair in it. The scar frightens the young ones, she said, and I do not beg for a place, and men who hand out places like to be begged. And she paused, and for the first time something flickered under the flatness, something she did not usually let show. And there is a way of being overlooked so long, my king, that being overlooked becomes the thing everyone knows about you. The captains do not choose me because the captains have never chosen me. It runs in a circle. I stopped trying to break it a long time ago. She looked down at the great wolf leaning warm against her hip. I only broke it this morning because he was going to die for the same reason, because everyone had decided the story of him was already finished. Havard, beside me, made a low sound in his throat. I glanced at him and found my hard old war captain looking at the woman as though a wall he had leaned on his whole life had turned out to be a door. Skal is the war wolf of the Vascarn line, I said. He carried my brother. Since my brother fell, he has carried no one and suffered no hand, and I had ordered him put down as a beast beyond saving. I heard the yard behind me, 100 warriors utterly silent on the walls, and I did not care who heard what I said next. You did in a quarter of an hour what 4 of my best warriors could not do in a moon. You will tell me how. I didn't do anything, she said. I only stopped doing the thing everyone else was doing. They all went to him to win. I have never won anything in my life. So I went to him to lose, to kneel, to give him my empty hands, to let him decide. Creatures that have been mastered their whole lives and then lost the one who loved them. She stopped. Her hand moved on the wolf's silver shoulder and the great beast pressed into it. They don't need another master. They need someone to stop treating them like a thing to be broken. They need someone to stop treating them like a thing to be broken. I have ruled a hard hold in a hard country, and I have heard a great deal of counsel from a great many clever men, and I do not think any of it ever landed in me the way those plain words did, spoken by a warrior in the melting frost with my brother's wolf under her hand. The song, I said, my voice caught, I let it. Where did you learn the song? Now for the first time she looked uncertain. I don't know, my king, she said slowly. I've always known it, since before I remember, I thought, a small frown, that scarred brow drawing down. I thought everyone knew it. It's just a thing that's always been in me. When I need to be calm, I hum it. When the pits were bad, I hummed it to myself in the dark. She shook her head. Why? Because my brother sang it, I said, and I have never heard it from any other living soul. The yard was so silent, I could hear the frost dripping from the wall. I am not a man given to the old stories. I had let my council parade their alliance daughters past me for 9 years precisely, because I had stopped believing in the thing the old songs promised. But I stood there with the warmth of that unnamed knowing still glowing behind my ribs where the wolf had lit it, and I looked at a scarred woman who had walked out of my 3rd Warband's ranks knowing a song only my dead brother sang. And I felt the whole architecture of what I had believed about my own cold heart quietly come down. Sable, I said, you will not be going back to the 3rd band. Her chin came up. I saw her brace, the flat readiness of a person who has been told 100 times to expect nothing and has been disappointed enough to armor against even the small hopes. My king, I did not ask for. I know you did not ask, I said. You have made a great deal of not asking. That is over now. I looked at the wolf, and the wolf looked back at me, calm and pale-eyed and waiting, and I understood at last what Irik's beast had been trying to tell me since the moment she knelt. Skal has chosen. Warwolves of the old blood do not choose lightly, and they do not choose twice. He carried my brother, and he grieved him 3 years, and this morning he laid down that grief in the hands of the one soul in the world he would take it from. I drew a breath. I would be a poor king and a poorer man if I could not read what my own brother's wolf has written this plain. The beast is yours, and I stopped. Havard was staring at me. 100 warriors on the walls were staring at me, and I found I did not care in the least. And I would know the woman he chose, I said, not as your king commanding it, as a man asking, will you stay at Vascarn, Sable, and let me learn who you are? I will not pretend the hold made it easy. A king may see a truth in a single dawn, but a hold is a slower creature, and Vascarn had spent 11 years deciding that the scarred woman of the 3rd band was no one, and 11 years of deciding is not undone by one morning of frost. The captains muttered. The Alliance Council, when word reached them, was scandalized. A low pit warrior, no rank, no bloodline, no braid, a scar, and sent me 3 separate letters reminding me of my duty to a proper match. Havard, to his lasting credit, muttered less than the rest, because Havard had stood at my shoulder in the moonyard and seen the wolf kneel with his own eyes, and my war captain was too honest a man to unsee a thing once seen. But even he came to me, the second night, and said what a war captain must. They'll say you were bewitched, my king, a wolf charm, a low woman's trick. They'll say she sang your grief out of you and put herself in its place. He was quiet a moment. I don't believe it. I want you to know I don't believe it. But I've served this hold 40 years, and I'd be failing you if I didn't say it out loud. Say it then, I said. You've said it, now hear me say this. Sit down, Havard. He sat. You have known me since I was a boy, I said. You knew my brother. In 9 years on this throne, how many times have you seen me move fast on a thing? He almost smiled. Never. You're the slowest deliberate man I ever served. Eirik used to say you'd think about a sunrise until it set. Then trust that I have not gone fast now. I leaned forward. I did not choose her, Havard. That is the part the council cannot hear, and I do not care whether they hear it. Skal chose her. The bond of the Vascarn line ran through my brother's wolf and struck me in the chest in that yard, and I have spent 9 years not feeling it precisely because it had not yet arrived. It has arrived. I'm not going to unmake a thing the old blood made, to soothe a council that never once in all those years brought me a single woman I could feel across a room. They brought me bloodlines. The wolf brought me my mate. I sat back. Now, that is what I know. What I don't know is her, and I mean to learn her slowly and honestly, and I will not so much as speak a claim aloud until she has had time to want it or not want it freely. She has been given nothing her whole life. I'll not have the first thing I give her be a cage, however golden. Havard looked at me a long moment. Then the old war captain did a thing he had not done in years. He rose and put his fist to his heart, the full salute, the one he gave me at my crowning. I stood in that yard, he said gruffly. I saw it kneel. That's enough for me, my king. The council can choke on their letters. At the door he paused. For what it's worth, she's teaching the young ones in the yard, the ones that used to flinch from her scar. Words got round about the wolf, and now half the whelps in the hold trail after her like, well. He cleared his throat. Like pups, you should see it. I did see it. I made a habit in the days that followed of coming down to the moonyard in the gray hour before the hold fully woke, and I would find her already there, Skal a great silver shadow at her side, and around her a knot of young warriors, the very ones I did not fail to notice, who had spent years too green or too cruel to see past the burn on her face. She was showing them, in that low, steady voice, what she had shown the wolf, how you win a hard thing by stopping trying to win it. How you go to a frightened creature, or a frightened person, or a frightened self with empty hands. She was not a warm woman. 11 years of being no one does not leave a person warm. But she was true, all the way through, with the trueness of tempered steel, and I found I could stand at the yard's edge and watch her teach and lose an hour without noticing it had gone. And the bond behind my ribs, that hearth the wolf had lit, did not fade the way I half feared it would when the wonder of the first morning wore off. It grew. It grew the way a hearth grows warm once it is caught steadily, without drama, until you cannot remember the room ever being cold. I did not rush her. I had told Havard the truth. The first thing I gave her would not be a cage. So instead I gave her small things, and I watched to see whether she could learn to receive them, which is its own kind of courage and a harder one than facing a war-wolf. I gave her the beast-keeper's own quarters, hard by the moonyard, so she and Skal need never be parted. She tried to refuse. I did not let her, but I did not make it a command. I made it a practicality, and I watched her allow it, warily, the way Skal had first allowed her hand. I gave her the third warband, not as its lowest warrior, as its captain. The captains muttered again, and then the mutter died, because when they put it to the test in the training yard she outfought every man who challenged her, not with size, which she did not have, but with the terrible patience of a person who has been hit her whole life, and learned exactly what a blow costs, and exactly how little it need cost you if you refuse to be afraid of it. She fought the way she had knelt to the wolf, giving nothing away, waiting, letting the other break himself against her stillness. By the fourth challenger, even Havard was grinning into his beard. And in the evenings, more and more, I gave her my company and asked nothing of it, and slowly, the way frost melts, not the way a door bangs open, she began to give me hers. She told me of the pits, not for pity, she had none of that in her. She told me the way you tell a comrade the plain shape of the country you came up through, orphaned before she could remember by a fever that took a whole quarter of the low hold, handed to the pit master because there was no one to say no. 14 the first time they sent her out to fight, and small, and everyone certain she would not last the season. I lasted the season, she said, in that flat voice, turning a cup in her scarred hands by my fire. I've mostly made a life out of lasting the season no one thought I'd last. The scar, I said carefully once, when enough evenings had passed that I judged I could. You needn't tell me, but I would carry it with you if you'd let me. She was quiet a while. Skal, who had taken to lying across the threshold of my chambers of an evening as though the whole hold were his to guard now, lifted his head. A fire in the low hold, she said at last. I was 19. A lamp went over in the barracks in the night and the old timber went up like tinder. I got 7 of the younger fighters out before the roof came down. Her hand rose unconsciously to the seam on her cheek. The last one I went back for through the door frame when it was already burning. That's this. A small shrug, as though it were nothing, as though a woman had not walked back into fire for a child the hold did not value and worn the proof of it on her face ever after while that same hold flinched from the sight. They lived, all 7. No one ever chose me for a raid after that, though. A burned face frightens the recruits. She looked up at me, and for once she let me see the whole flat weight of it. I stopped minding. It's easier not to mind. I sat with that a long time. The fire cracked. The great wolf breathed slow in the doorway. Sable, I said, I am going to tell you a thing, and I am going to say it once plainly, and then I am going to leave you free to do with it whatever you wish, to want it, or to set it down, and either way I will not love you the less for your answer. Her breath caught. It was the first time either of us had let the word into the room. She did not speak. The morning you knelt to my brother's wolf, I said, the old bond of my line ran up through that beast and told me a thing my proud, grieving eyes had refused to see. It told me you, not a bloodline, not a match my counsel could approve. You, the warrior no one chose, who knew my brother's song without ever having heard it, who walks back through burning doors for children strangers, who has made a whole life out of lasting seasons no one thought she'd last. I have ruled 9 years alone because I never once felt what I felt in that yard. I feel it still. It grows. It is not the wolf's charm, and it is not gratitude, and it is not a king's whim. It is the thing the old songs promised, and I had stopped believing in it, and you knelt in the frost and made a liar of my whole cold heart. She was very still. The scar caught the firelight. I will not claim you, I said. A claim you did not freely choose would make me no better than every captain who handed you a place you did not ask for. So I am not handing you anything. I am telling you the truth of what I feel, and I am asking as a man, Sable, not a king, whether there is any part of you that might, in its own time and with no hurry at all, come to feel it too. For a long moment she did not answer, and I made myself sit still under the silence the way she had taught me a person sit still under a frightened creature's breath. Then she set down the cup, and she said in that low, steady, true voice, with something in it I had never heard from her before, something that shook just slightly at the edges like a wall discovering it might after all be a door. I have spent my whole life learning not to want things, my king, because wanting things for a person like me is only a way of being disappointed on purpose. She drew a breath. But I have wanted, every gray morning for weeks now, for you to come down to the yard. I did not let myself call it wanting, I called it 100 other things. Her scarred hand turned over, palm up on her knee, the same low, open gesture she had shown the wolf, the one that asks for nothing and offers everything. I don't know how to do this. I've no practice at being chosen. You'll have to be patient with me. But yes, there is a part of me, There is more than a part. Skal in the doorway thumped his great tail once against the stone, as if to say, At last, at last the two of you have understood what I understood in the frost. And I laughed, and she almost laughed, and I crossed the room and knelt a king on the floor of his own chambers the way she had knelt in the yard, and I took that open scarred hand in both of mine, and I did not claim it. I only held it and let her decide moment by moment whether to let it be held. She let it. That was all. That was everything. We were mated at the turning of the season, when the first true snow came down soft over the moor, and the moonyard lay white and clean under it. I will not pretend the whole hold cheered at first, but a hold is a slower creature than a king, not a colder one, and it had by then watched the thing unfold too long to keep disbelieving it. They had seen the war-wolf that gutted the pen's pace gentle at her heel. They had seen the lowest warrior of the third band become its captain, and outfight all comers with a stillness that frightened braver men than she'd ever been given credit for facing. They had seen their king come down to the gray yard every dawn to watch a scarred woman teach the whelps to be unafraid, and they had drawn the plain conclusion that any hold draws when it sees its king's whole heart hung openly in the cold air. That whatever this was, it was real, and it was not going to be talked out of. The captains who had never chosen her stood in the yard the day we were mated, and one by one they came forward and put their fists to their hearts, and I watched her receive it, the salute of the very men who had spent 11 years looking past her with that flat, steady grace, giving nothing away, until the last of them, an old raid captain who had turned her down more times than either would ever count, said gruffly, "Should have chosen you a decade ago, Captain. The whole third band's the better for you." I was a fool, and I saw her armor slip just for a breath and something come up under it that was very young and had been waiting a long time. She did not weep. She was not a woman who wept, but she inclined her head and she said, "You're choosing now. That's enough." And she gave him the small hard truth of it, which was the largest mercy she knew how to give, and the old captain went away looking like a man who'd been forgiven a debt he had not known how to name. Havard stood up at the mating as kin, for she had no kin, and my gray war captain's voice was not entirely steady doing it, which he would deny to his grave. And Skal stood at her side through all of it, great and silver and calm, Irik's wolf, no longer grieving the beast that had carried my brother out of every fight but the last one, and had come home alone, and had refused for 3 years to lay his sorrow down for any hand but the one the bond had been keeping for him all along. That is the thing I understood at the end, that I had not understood at the beginning. I had gone down to the moonyard that first dawn believing I was there to bury the last of my brother. I had it exactly backwards. Skal had not gone wild with grief and refused every warrior because he was finished. He had refused them because he was waiting, because the old blood in him knew, the way the old blood always knows before the proud head does, that there was one soul coming who would kneel with empty hands, and he would suffer no lesser hand to master him in the meantime. He had held the door of his grief shut for 3 long years, keeping it, until she walked out of the ranks of the overlooked and knew my brother's song without knowing why, and knelt, and let him lay it down. The wolf had not been the last of Irik I had to bury. The wolf had been the first gift Irik ever gave me from the other side of the dark, his own war-wolf, sent to find, in a scarred woman no one in the world had ever chosen, the mate his brother's grieving eyes would never have found alone. Late that first night, as her king and her mate, I woke in the deep cold before dawn and found the bed beside me empty, and knew without looking where she had gone. I rose and pulled on a cloak and went down through the sleeping hold to the moonyard, and there she was, as she was every gray hour, out on the white snow under the last of the stars, my Luna, the warrior no captain would take, kneeling in the cold beside the great silver wolf with one scarred hand resting easy on his flank, humming very low, that small circling song that only my dead brother had ever sung. Skal's pale eyes were half closed. His breathing was slow and deep and untroubled. The grief was gone out of him entirely and out of the yard, and I stood at the edge of the white and felt it very nearly out of me. I did not go to her at once. I stood a while in the cold and simply watched, the way I had watched that first morning. Only now the leaning forward in my chest had a name, and the name was hers. Then she turned her scarred face toward me across the snow, and she was not surprised to see me, and she lifted her free hand, palm up, low, open, asking nothing, offering all of it, the way she had once lifted it to a werewolf everyone had given up for lost. I crossed the white yard, and I knelt down in the snow beside my mate and my brother's wolf, and I put my hand over her open hand, and neither of us spoke, because there was no longer anything in the wide, cold north that needed saying. The sun cleared the wall,